My house had a strange energy growing up, always did. But then when I turned 10, my mom made the worst decision in her life. She had bought me a Ouija board because I saw one online and I was begging for it, so I got one. For my 10th birthday party, I held it at my friend's house, her little trailer. There was about 6 of us, all about 10 to 11 years old. We played the Ouija board in her kitchen, which was connected to her back living room. Her back living room had extremely scary vibes to it, and I never slept back there because of it. So we just started asking questions after we lit a bunch of candles. We connected to a woman named Abby. She spelled out words that were violent and horrible. I'll just say that. After spelling out that she died because of someone else doing something bad to her, if you know what I mean, the candles went out. We were in the complete dark. Nobody blew out the candles, and then we all screamed and everyone started crying. So a while goes by, and me and my friend Alex continue playing with this board to talk to Abby. She told us that she was a young girl who passed away in a violent way, and that she was angry and wanted to harm us too. The next day, I got a message from my friend saying whatever I did to her at the sleepover wasn't funny, and now she hates me. Dramatic 10-year-olds. I had no idea what she was talking about. She sent a photo of a large scratch on her back. I continued receiving things like this from my friends. Then it happened to me. 3 large red marks on my back, like claws. A while goes by, and honestly, I'm struggling to remember what happened. I recall Abby saying she wanted a body, so I brought her a doll. The doll had light brown curly hair, a red bow, and an older Victorian red velvet dress, and green-brown eyes. Her skin was porcelain and very fragile. The doll would move around on its own, and I always became very uncomfortable around it. The older I got, the less activity happened. I thought that she had left me entirely for a while, until I saw a psychic, and she told me I had an extremely dark energy attached to me. She told me it wasn't a little girl, as Abby came off as a younger girl or woman usually. She said it was most likely a demonic energy. I used sage and everything to try to get rid of it. For a while, this worked. Then when I was 14, I bought dowsing rods, and I was messing around with them with my friends at school, boarding school, so I wasn't home. My friend was talking to her male cousin who had passed away, and all of a sudden, my other friend screams. She turns around and said something that I will never forget. "She hurt me!" We looked at her back, and there was blood everywhere. After that, we closed the rod session, and I went into a full-blown panic attack and explained everything about Abby. These girls never even knew about her, and the one girl who got scratched said that she had been dreaming about the doll I talked about. When I went home, I got rid of the doll and made a vow to never bring her up again, except for this post. I will never be able to explain why the girls and I both got scratched. Most of the activity in my house is now gone, but something is just off every time I hear her name, or anyone who remotely reminds me of the doll. One of the most evil things I have ever encountered was a little girl named Abby, who was not a little girl. Back in the early 2000s, my parents and I lived in a neighborhood that was heavily involved in witchcraft, Satanism, etc. We didn't actually discover this until we had moved away, so it all made sense afterwards. We lived in this house for 5 years. Our house was 2 stories. We had a basement, which was our family room, that also had a separate office room. We detached the door to the room so it would be permanently open, directly facing the couch we would sit on to watch TV together as a family. Adjacent to the office, we had an electric piano right against the wall, so the office entrance would be on our right if we were sitting there. To go upstairs, you'd have to directly pass the office and face the door that goes into our garage. This info will be important later. The first year was fine, but gradually the events became more malicious and sinister, to the point where we couldn't take it anymore. We were likely the only Christian family in our neighborhood, and I believe that others caught on because we didn't celebrate Halloween, and we didn't participate in giving out candy to the neighborhood kids. This angered our community, even though we were kind to others, and we kept to ourselves for the most part. Our house was egged, and we became a target of seemingly harmless pranks and house vandalism. Then, all of the paranormal events started happening after my black cat disappeared right before Halloween. We were coming home from church one night, and it was close to midnight. We pulled into our neighborhood, and sitting on the sidewalk corner all by himself was a little boy in a green shirt. My parents were slightly unsettled because it was unsafe and unusual for a child to be out this late at night. They considered talking to this boy, but when we drove up to him, he looked up, and my parents saw that he had no face. A completely blank slate where his face should be. Needless to say, we booked it home, and my parents didn't tell me at the time, because I was maybe 5 or 6, to spare me from nightmares. But some years later, they told me this and what happened. Then things started happening around the house. My mom and I used to take piano lessons. So one day, while my dad was cooking lunch, my mom was in the basement practicing on the electric piano. I was in my parents' room watching Stanley, a children's cartoon that was really popular back then. While my mom was practicing piano, a child's hand popped out of the office room and mimicked a child's voice, telling my mom to come and play. She thought it was me and told me to cut it out. The voice coerced her again to play, and my mom became irritated that I was distracting her from practicing, so she stomped into the office to find no one there. I'll never forget how pale she was when I heard her scream my name and run upstairs. She asked my dad where I was, and since I heard her, I ran to her, asking what it was that she needed from me. She asked me if I was messing with her, and I told her I had no idea what she was talking about. My dad chimed in too, and said I was in the bedroom the whole time. She concluded that it must have been her imagination, apologized to us, and went back downstairs. Not even 10 minutes later, she runs back upstairs, panicking, saying that the child's hand appeared again in the office, talking to her, and she knew it couldn't have been me. She was freaked out the rest of the day for sure. Another instance was when we were watching The Ring in the basement at night. Around the time of the first jump scare of the movie, when they open the closet and see the disfigured girl, my dog starts barking like crazy at the office entrance. He would charge at it and then back away, as if something was trying to force its way closer to us. It became really cold, and I started crying because I felt scared and uncomfortable at my dog's strange behavior. My dad turned on the light in the office, but nothing was there. My dog was going nuts, chasing something we couldn't see, so we decided to call it a night and go upstairs to bed. My dog had a big crate in the garage that he would sleep in, so my dad put him in there before we went to bed. At this point, we called a minister from our church to come and pray for us. He prayed for our protection, but things got so much worse after that. A few nights later, we all woke up to screaming coming from the garage. It sounded like a little girl being brutally murdered, screaming so loud that it pierced my ears. My dog was also barking like crazy, so we knew we had to do something. my mom and I hid behind a dresser, and my dad hesitantly took a long decorative bamboo stick as a weapon to go to the garage and see what was going on. He said that he was shaking going downstairs, and the screaming got louder and more violent, right up until his hand touched the doorknob. As soon as he did, complete silence. It was eerie and too quiet. The only thing making noise was my dog whimpering and barking, so my dad got him as quickly as possible and noped right back upstairs. We started sleeping in the same room after that. Once we settled back down, my mom and I fell asleep first, but my dad was wide awake. He said that he could hear something pressing buttons on the TV remote on his bedside table. He didn't dare look, but shut his eyes and pretended to sleep until he eventually did. Another day, my mom was at work, and my dad was outside mowing the lawn. Being an only child, not interested in AOL dial-up internet yet, I had to find ways to entertain myself. I was spinning in circles until I made myself dizzy. Mid-spin, I saw a man standing in the hallway with the gun pointed right at me. I was so startled, but I was so dizzy, so I fell over, scared to death. I screamed for my dad and ran slothily to the front door. I didn't want to look back if he was still there. Dad was worried sick for me in my panic state, but what can he do? What could any of us have done? Dad put up the house for sale and sold it to the first buyer. We were out of there so quick it wasn't even funny. These events traumatized me, and I'm extremely hypersensitive to evil spirits and evil energy. Horror movies don't scare me at all, compared to the real fear and panic you feel in those moments. When I was about 11, I attended a birthday party on a farm in the middle of nowhere. They pulled out a Ouija board and asked it questions. They were all answered correctly according to the kiddos. I didn't participate, but I was in the room. I was young and I had no idea, and I thought it was just a board game. But ever since that day, I was never the same. I would see and feel a menacing presence. It seemed to follow everywhere I went and affected me emotionally and mentally to the point where my doctor diagnosed me with bipolar disorder. Fast forward to about age 24 or 25. My mom noticed my behavior had gotten worse and erratic, and since she was Buddhist, she brought me to the temple. The priest or monk advised my mom that I had a Western ghost attached to me for the last decade, and to send it off with offerings. I believe she recited a prayer and offered it fruits and food. This is normal in Taoism. And since that day, I have felt like such a huge weight has lifted off my shoulders, and have felt a lot lighter. But that night, after taking a shower and stepping out, all 10 of the little light bulbs atop my mirror shattered onto me, and I received a cut on my foot. It felt like a last F.U. to me. Fast forward to 8 years later, I experienced something at my family's house when I was visiting last week. I was having an intense disagreement with my fiancé in the living room, and I felt irrationally upset and angry. And I saw an anger in him that I had never seen before. I kept seeing a head pop in and out really fast, multiple times, coming from the wall next to the kitchen hallway. It felt very mischievous. It was a dark shadow. I thought it was a family member checking in, or my eyes playing tricks. But it happened multiple times, and I kept seeing it over and over. The next couple days, I felt uneasy, and felt like something was watching me. Then my fiancé sees a figure in the house next to us. He would tilt his head, confused as to why this person was staring at him, and copying his movements. Moving his head right to left, and the shadow would copy him. He was so startled he called out loudly to me. Mind you, my fiancé is a huge skeptic, and paranormal things never happened to him. I knew something was off. There were a couple of nights where I felt like we were sleep-talking to each other, and I'd wake up feeling a presence. It's continued for the last 3 days, so I feel like something may have followed us home.